Each day, incoming transfers should be validated. Any transfers that are outside of the 24-hour time period should be corrected as quickly as possible. Essentially, each metric state requires that you report your transfers within 24 hours of them occurring. Some states even say that you have to reconcile all of your records at the end of business every single day. So make sure that you're always staying within these parameters to make sure that you are always checking for your incoming transfers. During the intake shipment workflow, you need to validate a few different things. So first, we want to take a look at the manifest. And on that manifest, we want to take a look at the driver information, the license information, especially if you have multiple stores that you're shipping to that are under the same entity. I have seen a pretty big compliance risk is sending the shipment to the incorrect retail license. So make sure that you are always validating that license information as well on that manifest. And then within the manifest, of course, you want to check the metric package tag, make sure that you physically receive that metric package tag. Also take a look at the count or the quantity, and then also the unit of measure, and make sure there's no conversion errors going on with those unit of measures as well. In addition to all of those different record retention and data points, you also want to take a look at the packaging and labeling. So remember, especially with final form units, anything that you are accepting, that is now your responsibility. And in some situations, you cannot even go backwards in the supply chain to be able to correct a labeling or packaging discrepancy or compliance risk due to lack of information or improper information. So just make sure that you are keeping a very close eye on those labels. And in addition, you should also be receiving your COA test results and ensure that that batch number on those COA test results also aligns with the labeling. So just the entire shipment you really want to validate. And as far as the packaging and labeling, you really don't need to go take a look at each individual unit. However, from each SKU, I would take about 5 different units from each SKU to make sure that everything is compliant. Attached in this lecture, you will also find an example of a packaging and labeling checklist. This is exactly what RMCC uses. We create our packaging and labeling checklist by the product type. So take a look at that download to see what an example packaging and labeling checklist will look like. In addition to all of that information, you also want to make sure that the license that you are doing business with is not expired and is truly licensed by the state and or the county or city. You also want to make sure that you gather all of your COA paperwork, and that is neatly organized with the manifest and the invoice and any other information with that batch of goods. And then tax collection as well. You need to make sure that you are keeping any relevant information and record retention centered around tax collection. And then most importantly, on that invoice that should be tied into your tax record retention, depending on your state, you also might need specific statements on your invoice to communicate who is responsible for collecting those taxes, especially between B2B. And then a few other record retention documents you should keep track of is your weighmaster certificate, and then also your seller's permit. Some of these things you might use during the onboarding process with a new vendor, such as like the license and seller's permit and things like that. So this would be a really great example of working into your workflows. What is that onboarding process with new vendors? So that way you can capture some of these data points ahead of time and not require it for each shipment.